The phone call came at exactly 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, right as I was about to sign a seven-figure cybersecurity contract that would secure my company's position as Denver's premier digital defense firm. My penthouse office overlooked the glittering skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the success I had built from absolutely nothing. I should have let it go to voicemail. I should have known that when my mother Eleanor calls at this hour, it's never good news. "Avery, darling, we need to talk about your sister's wedding." Her voice had that particular tremor that meant money was about to be involved. "We're at your building lobby. Buzz us up." "It's urgent." 20 minutes later, my parents sat in the leather chairs across from my desk, avoiding eye contact like guilty children. My father pushed a thick, cream-coloured envelope across the marble surface. I opened it. Inside was a contract from the Brown Palace Hotel, already signed in my father's handwriting, already legally binding. The number jumped off the page. $75,000. Payment due in 14 days. And there, highlighted in yellow marker on page 3, was my name listed as the responsible party for all wedding expenses. "This is a legally binding commitment," my father Robert said, sliding the paperwork closer to me, with hands that had never signed a loan document for me, never co-signed anything that might have made my life easier. "Vivian Sterling is threatening to sue us for breach of promise if we don't deliver. Do you understand what that would do to our reputation, to our family name?" I stared at the document, at the elegant script detailing ice sculptures and 10-course meals and a string quartet that cost more than most people's cars. Then I looked at my father, really looked at him, and asked the question that had been burning in my chest for 15 years. "Tell me, Dad, how much did you spend on my education when I was 18? His face went red. "This isn't the time for your petty grievances, Avery." "Zero." I answered my own question. "The answer is zero." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Those words hung in the air between us. She deserves this moment, as if I had never deserved a single moment of support in my entire life. Look, if you've ever been the invisible child, the one expected to struggle while your sibling got everything handed to them, you know exactly how this feels. So before I tell you what I did next, do me a favor. Hit. Like, if you think I'm justified, subscribe to see how this plays out and comment if you've ever been in a situation like this. Because what I'm about to show them will change everything. Let me take you back to where this really started. I was 18 years old, driving a beat-up Honda Civic that I had saved for 2 years to buy working double shifts at a diner while maintaining a 4.0 GPA because I knew that scholarship money was my only shot at college. It was late October, the kind of Colorado evening where the temperature drops 40 degrees after sunset, and my car decided that was the perfect moment to die on the side of Highway 36. I called my father from a gas station payphone, teeth chattering, asking if he could help me get the car towed and possibly co-sign a small loan so I could get it fixed and pay my upcoming tuition bill. The repairs were estimated at $5,000. My tuition was another $8,000. I had $1,300 in my savings account and pure desperation in my voice. "Debt is disgrace, Avery," Robert had said, his voice crackling through the receiver. "You need to learn to shoulder your own burdens. This is character building. Figure it out." He hung up. I stood there in the cold, watching cars pass by on the highway, each one carrying people who probably had parents that gave a damn. I ended up sleeping in the campus library for 3 weeks, taking cold showers in the gym, eating whatever the cafeteria workers would slip me after hours, because they felt sorry for the girl who studied with duct tape holding her backpack together. I worked 4 jobs that semester. 4. I graduated with honors and $30,000 in student loan debt because apparently character building was my inheritance. Meanwhile, 3 months after my car died, I came home for Christmas break and found a brand new BMW sitting in the driveway with a giant red bow on it. Brooke was 70. She had never worked a day in her life. She squealed and jumped into my father's arms, and my mother took about 500 pictures for her Facebook page with captions about being blessed and providing for their baby girl. I remember standing in the doorway with my single duffel bag of clothes that I had washed in the library bathroom sink, watching this scene unfold and feeling something inside me crack. But I swallowed it. I smiled. I said congratulations, because that's what you do when you're the designated strong one, right? You take it. You absorb it. You tell yourself that maybe you're being selfish for wanting the same love, the same support, the same basic human consideration. The pattern continued through the years. Brooke got her sorority dues, paid her apartment rent, covered her spring break trips to Cancun funded. I got birthday cards with $20 inside and lectures about fiscal responsibility. When I needed help after a surgery from working myself into exhaustion, I got a text that said they couldn't make it, but hoped I felt better. When Brooke got a cold, they hired a private nurse. I built my cybersecurity company from the ground up, working 100-hour weeks, sleeping in my office, eating ramen, and turning fear and rejection into fuel. Every contract I won, every client I secured, every employee I hired, it was all me. No family investment, no connections, no safety net, just sheer stubborn refusal to let their neglect define my worth. And then I made it. I really made it. By 32, I had a penthouse in downtown Denver, a company worth multiple millions, and a reputation as one of the best cybersecurity experts in the state. I had proven every single one of their dismissals wrong. That's when they started calling more often. The first few requests were small, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. Help with a car payment. Assistance with a medical bill. I gave it because I thought maybe finally we could have something resembling a normal relationship. Maybe they would see me acknowledge what I had overcome, feel some shred of pride in the daughter they had forced to swim or drown. But it was never enough. And it was never accompanied by an apology. Never a "we should have helped you" or "we're sorry for how we treated you." Just more requests, more expectations, more reasons why Brooke needed things, and I should provide them because I could afford it now. Then came Brooke's engagement to Julian Sterling, and suddenly I wasn't just the family ATM. I was the family's ticket to high society respectability. The Sterlings were old money Denver. The kind of family that had buildings named after them and belonged to clubs that required 3 generations of membership approval. Vivian Sterling, Julian's mother, was a socialite who measured worth in designer labels and property values. And apparently, she had made it very clear that if her son was going to marry into a family like ours, there would be certain expectations about the wedding's grandeur. So that Thursday night, when my parents sat in my office with that contract, I realised what I was really looking at. This wasn't about Brooke's happiness. This was about them buying their way into a social circle that had always looked down on them, and I was supposed to be their bank. "You have $75,000 in your account right now, more than we could make in a year," Robert said, leaning forward. "This is your obligation. This is about saving the family's honour." I looked at the contract again, at the venue, at the date, at the deposit, already paid with money they didn't have. Then I looked at my mother, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "When I was 18 and needed $5,000 to keep my car running so I could get to work and school, you told me debt was disgrace and I needed to build character. But now you've signed a $75,000 contract for a party and expect me to pay for it because family honour is at stake." "This is different," Eleanor said quickly. "This is Brooke's one special day. You had your chance to make something of yourself. She deserves this moment." Something in me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I pulled out my laptop, opened a specific folder I had been building for years, and started printing. Page after page came out of my high-end office printer. When I was done, I had a document that was professionally formatted, dated, and itemized down to the last penny. "What is this?" Robert demanded, picking up the first page. "That," I said calmly, is your invoice. I call it the character building expense statement. Let me walk you through it. I stood up, moved around to their side of the desk, and started pointing at line items. Tuition costs for 4 years of college, including the interest I paid on loans you refused to co-sign, comes to $48,000. Medical expenses for stress-related health issues caused by working 80-hour weeks to keep myself fed and housed, $12,000. Therapy costs to deal with the psychological damage of parental neglect and emotional abandonment, $15,000. And then there's this special line item here. I tapped a section I had highlighted in yellow. Emotional damages and compensation for pain of abandonment. I valued that conservatively at $20,000, though honestly, it's priceless. The silence in the room was deafening. The total amount you owe me, I continued, is $95,000. Now I'm a reasonable businesswoman, so here's my offer. I pulled out my checkbook, wrote a check for $75,000 and placed it next to their wedding contract. You want $75,000? Excellent. Here it is. All you have to do is pay me the $95,000 you owe me first. Once I receive that payment, I will personally hand-deliver this check to the Brown Palace's event coordinator. This is business the way you taught me. No credit, no handouts, no free rides. You wanted me to learn that debt is disgrace and character is built through struggle. Well, I learned it. Now it's your turn. My mother's face went white. My father's went purple. You ungrateful, selfish, cold-hearted snake! Robert hissed, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. By throwing money in our faces, by trying to humiliate your own family. Everything you've done for me. I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. Please enlighten me. Name one thing. One single thing you've done for me that you didn't do twice as much for Brooke. They couldn't. They stood there, sputtering, making vague gestures, but they couldn't name anything. That's what I thought, I said. Now get out of my office. When you have my $95,000, we can talk about your $75,000 problem. Until then, I'm afraid I can't help you. Character building, remember. They left in a fury, slamming doors, making threats about disowning me, about telling everyone what a terrible daughter I was. I sat in my office until midnight, staring at that wedding contract and wondered if I had just nuked my entire family relationship. Then I did something that I was exceptionally good at. I started digging. See, being a cybersecurity expert means I know how to find information. I know how to trace digital footprints, and I know when someone is hiding something. It took me about 3 hours of completely legal public record searches, social media, deep dives, and good old-fashioned investigative work to uncover some very interesting facts about Vivian Sterling and her precious wedding demands. First, I discovered that Vivian had significantly overstated her family's current financial position. The Sterlings had money once, sure, but Julian's father had made some spectacularly bad investments in the past decade. They were living on reputation and credit cards, keeping up appearances while drowning in debt. The only reason Vivian was so insistent on this elaborate wedding was that she needed it to look legitimate enough to convince her own social circle that everything was fine. Second, I found text messages that Brooke had carelessly left visible on her cloud backup messages she had sent to Vivian, mocking my penthouse as too small, calling my car too ordinary, laughing about how her big sister, the nerd, was finally going to be useful for something other than making the family look good by association with her success. Third, and this was the real kicker, I discovered that Vivian's plan all along was to have the bride's family pay for everything while she took credit for hosting the society wedding of the season. She had no intention of contributing a dime. It was a scam dressed up in wedding tulle and social climbing ambition. I compiled everything into a neat digital file, and then I did something that I knew would either fix everything or burn it all to the ground. I sent an anonymous email to Julian Sterling with selected screenshots and documentation. Then I sent a separate package to my grandfather George, my mother's father, who was the only family member who had ever given a damn about me. George was 86, sharp as a tack, and had never approved of how my parents treated me. He had slipped me money for college when he found out they refused to help, told me I was worth more than their neglect, and made sure I knew that someone in the family saw my worth. He lived modestly, despite having more money than my parents could dream of, and he despised social climbers and people who valued appearances over integrity. I knew exactly what he would do with the information I sent him. 3 days later, I got a call from George. "You've been busy," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Just connecting some dots," I replied. "Well, those dots just connected themselves into quite the picture. How would you feel about attending a little pre-wedding gathering at the Brown Palace tomorrow evening? I believe they're doing a dress fitting and floral arrangement viewing. Your parents and Vivian will be there desperately trying to explain why they don't have the deposit for the venue." "Will I need to bring anything?" I asked. "Just yourself and that spine of steel you've developed. I'll bring the fireworks." The Brown Palace Hotel was everything Colorado old money aspired to be, elegant, historic, dripping with the kind of understated luxury that screamed wealth without being gaudy about it. The atrium rose above us with its signature cast-iron balconies and stained glass ceiling, and the room they had reserved for the pre-wedding planning session probably cost more per hour than most people's monthly rent. I arrived in a simple black dress and heels, carrying nothing but my phone and my composure. My parents were already there, looking stressed and whispering urgently to each other. Brooke sat nearby in her wedding dress, looking absolutely beautiful and completely oblivious to the tension. Vivian Sterling held court near the floral displays, her expression that particular mix of disdain and superiority that only truly insecure people can master. Then George walked in, and the entire energy of the room shifted. My grandfather might have been in his mid-80s, but he commanded respect the way mountains commanded awe. He walked with a cane he didn't really need, wore a suit that cost more than the catering bill, and had the kind of presence that made everyone shut up and pay attention. "Eleanor Robert," he said, nodding to my parents. "Vivian, and my beautiful granddaughters." He kissed Brooke on the cheek, then turned to me and winked. "George, what a lovely surprise," Vivian said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "We weren't expecting you this evening." "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world," George replied. "I heard there was some confusion about the wedding finances, and I thought I might be able to help clarify a few things." My mother's face went pale. My father looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. "Actually," George continued, pulling out his phone and connecting it to the room's display screen with the kind of technological competence that surprised everyone. "I think everyone here should see something. Call it a family educational moment." The screen lit up, and suddenly my character-building expense statement was visible to everyone in the room. Every line item, every dollar, every painful detail of how I had been treated versus how Brooke had been pampered. "This," George said, his voice carrying through the suddenly silent room, "is a document my granddaughter Avery created. Let me read some highlights. Tuition assistance provided to Avery, 0. Tuition assistance provided to Brooke, full payment approximately $60,000. Vehicle assistance for Avery, 0, forced to let car be repossessed. Vehicle assistance for Brooke, brand new BMW, $35,000. Medical support." When Avery collapsed from exhaustion, a text message. Medical support when Brooke had a cold private nurse. "Dad, please," Eleanor started, but George held up a hand. "I'm not finished." You see, what's interesting is that when Avery needed $5,000 at 18 to keep her life from falling apart, she was told that debt is disgrace and struggle builds character. But when you wanted $75,000 for a party, suddenly Avery's obligation to family honor became paramount. He turned to face my parents directly. You taught one daughter that she was worth nothing and had to earn every scrap of dignity. You taught the other that she was entitled to everything without working for any of it. And now you're shocked that one of them has boundaries and the other has expectations. Brooke was crying. I couldn't tell if it was embarrassment or genuine emotion. But wait, George said, swiping to the next image on the screen. There's more. Because this isn't just about playing favourites. This is about fraud. The screen now showed the text messages between Brooke and Vivian, the ones where they mocked me and plotted to extract money. Then it showed Vivian's financial records, the ones I had pulled from public filings showing the Sterling family's real financial situation. It seems, George said, looking directly at Vivian, that this wedding was never about love or family or celebration. It was about maintaining an illusion that you, Vivian, desperately need to convince your country club friends that your family isn't drowning in debt. An illusion that you, Eleanor and Robert, need to feel like you've finally made it into the social circle that's looked down on you for decades. And all of it was going to be funded by the daughter you spent 20 years treating like an inconvenience. Julian Sterling, who had been standing in the corner looking increasingly uncomfortable, stepped forward. "Mother," he said quietly, "is this true? Did you know about all of this?" Vivian's mask finally cracked. "Julian, darling, you don't understand. These people, they're not our caliber. I was trying to make the best of your unfortunate infatuation by at least ensuring the wedding looked appropriate." Unfortunate infatuation. Brooke's voice was small, broken. "Is that what you call me?" "I call you what you are, dear. A pretty girl from a striving family who got lucky." Vivian's voice was ice. "Your sister is the only one with any real accomplishments, and even that is just trade, not true class." The silence that followed was absolute. Julian turned to Brooke, and I saw something die in his eyes. Not love, necessarily, but the illusion that had been holding this whole thing together. "I'm sorry, Brooke," he said. "I can't do this. I can't marry into a family dynamic this toxic, and I won't have my mother treating my wife like a social climbing project. This wedding is cancelled." Brooke's sob echoed through the atrium. My mother rushed to her, but Brooke pushed her away. "No," Brooke said, turning to look at me. "Avery, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I mean, I knew, but I didn't let myself really know, you understand. I thought it was just how things were, that you were strong and didn't need help, and I was the one who needed taking care of. But that's not true, is it? They just decided you weren't worth helping, and I went along with it, because it benefited me. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to hate her, to let her drown in the consequences of years of thoughtless cruelty. But another part of me, the part that remembered teaching her to ride a bike when she was 5, saw a kid who had been raised in a toxic system just like I had, just from a different angle. "Brooke," I said carefully, "I don't hate you. But I can't keep letting this family use me as a bank account to fund their delusions." "I know," she whispered, "and you shouldn't. None of this is right. None of it." Vivian Sterling gathered her things with as much dignity as she could muster, which wasn't much, and left without another word. Julian followed her, stopping only to tell Brooke he would have his lawyer contact her about the engagement. My parents stood frozen, watching their social climbing dreams dissolve in real time. "The venue is going to charge a cancellation fee," Robert said numbly. $30,000. We don't have it. "That's not my problem," I said. "You signed a contract without the means to fulfill it. That's called fraud, actually, or at least breach of contract. You'll need to work that out with them. After everything, you're just going to stand there and watch us be destroyed." Eleanor's voice was shrill. "No, Mum," I said, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt absolutely clear. "I'm going to stand here and watch you face the consequences of your own choices. There's a difference. You destroyed yourselves. You just expected me to clean up the mess like I always have. But I'm done." George put his hand on my shoulder. "Come on, Avery. Let's go get dinner. There's a lovely Italian place down the street." "What about us?" Robert called after us. George turned, and his expression was colder than I had ever seen it. You're adults. Figure it out. Character building. Remember, that's what you believe in. Let's see how much character you actually have. In the following weeks, the fallout was spectacular. My parents' social circle, which had been marginal at best, completely evaporated when word got out about the cancelled wedding and the reasons behind it. The Brown Palace did indeed pursue them for the cancellation fee, and they had to sell their car and take out a loan to cover it. Vivian Sterling's reputation took a hit when several other families came forward with similar stories of her financial manipulation. But here's the thing that surprised me. 2 months after the disaster at the Brown Palace, Brooke knocked on my door. She looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more real than I had ever seen her. I got her a job, she said without preamble. It's just retail at Nordstrom, but it's something. I'm living with a roommate in a studio apartment, and I'm taking business classes at community college. I want to pay you back. Not the $95,000, because holy hell, I don't think I'll make that much in a decade, but something, to show you that I'm trying to be better. I invited her in, made coffee, and we talked for hours. Really talked maybe for the first time in our lives. She told me about growing up feeling like she had to be perfect and decorative to earn love, about how she was never taught that she could be competent or capable. I told her about the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible, the way I had to build armor just to survive. We weren't fixed. You don't fix 15 years of dysfunction in one conversation. But it was a start. As for the $75,000 I had written that check for, the one I never handed over, I did something with it that felt right. I established the George and Lydia Hayes Scholarship Fund for students who have been denied family financial support for their education. The tagline, "Opportunity is not a crime." Every semester, we give 3 students full tuition coverage and a living stipend. Every semester, I read their essays about working multiple jobs, sleeping in cars, choosing between food and textbooks, and I see myself. And I make sure they know that someone sees their struggle values, their strength, and believes they deserve support without shame. My parents and I don't speak much anymore. There have been a few awkward phone calls, some half-hearted attempts at apologies that sound more like justifications. I'm not interested in reconciliation that requires me to pretend the past didn't happen. Maybe someday they'll understand what they did. Maybe they won't. Either way, I've stopped letting their validation, or lack thereof, define my worth. George and I have dinner every Sunday. He tells me stories about my grandmother Lydia, who died before I was born, and how she would have been proud of me. He says I have her spine and her sense of justice. I'll take that legacy over anything my parents could offer. The thing about breaking free from toxic family dynamics is that people expect you to be angry all the time. They expect you to be bitter, vindictive, consumed by the injustice of it all. But that's not what freedom feels like. Freedom feels like being able to look at a ridiculous demand and say no without guilt. Freedom feels like knowing your worth isn't tied to how much you sacrifice for people who won't sacrifice for you. Freedom feels like building something meaningful from the ashes of what was broken. I still run my cybersecurity company. I still work too hard and sleep too little. But now when I work, it's for me. It's for my team. It's for the scholarship recipients who send me thank you notes that make me cry. It's not to prove anything to people who decided before I could even speak that I wasn't worth their effort. And you know what the most surprising thing is? I'm happier. I'm lighter. The weight of trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it unconditionally is heavier than any professional challenge I've faced. Putting it down didn't make me heartless. It made me whole. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. How much of yourself are you sacrificing to maintain relationships with people who would never sacrifice for you? What would it feel like to put down that weight? What would you do with the energy you're currently spending on trying to be enough for people who have decided you never will be? Justice isn't always about revenge or public confrontation. Sometimes justice is simply refusing to participate in your own diminishment. Sometimes it's a bank transfer to a scholarship fund with the money that was supposed to buy someone else's social status. Sometimes it's a Sunday dinner with the one person who always saw your worth. The wedding that never happened, the family that shattered the confrontation that changed everything. That wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the one I chose to write for myself. And if this resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between being loved and being free, do me a favor. Hit that like button so I know I'm not alone in this. Subscribe because there are more stories where this came from, stories about what happens when you decide you deserve better. And leave a comment telling me what boundary you're ready to set, what weight you're ready to put down, what version of yourself you're ready to become when you stop trying to earn love that should have been freely given. You deserve better than crumbs. You always have. The question is, when are you going to believe it?